I'm Caden Love.
And I'm Seema Love, his wife.
And we are Love and Lore, taking dark fantasy, light fantasy, and everything in between. This time, we are going more towards dark fantasy.
For our book swap challenge, Caden read Romantasy, and I read a grimdark book called The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. I actually liked it. So, I think the first reason why I was afraid to read any stuff like that, because I expect grimdark to be sad, to be cruel. I kind of expected something like the Game of Thrones when I was reading it, and it wasn't like that. It was kind of more tame than Game of Thrones, honestly. Mm-hmm. No one was dying all the time. There was a war going all the time, which was good, and it was actually really character focused, which I loved. And Joe Abercrombie writes characters well. Usually it takes me a couple of chapters to really relate to a character and understand them, but by the end of first chapters of each of the characters, I was like, oh yeah, I love them. Mm-hmm. And it was really crazy to me.
Yeah, one of the weird things with it is that I think that, a lot of people get tripped up when they hear Lord of Grimdark, which is the moniker that's often given to Joe Abercrombie. They think all his books are dark and dreary, but I think that he veers more towards just having very morally gray characters, which I know is just such a hot topic now. And with that, you see, these characters are far from perfect. They have redeemable qualities, but also very big flaws. Mm-hmm. One of the greatest characters in this is Glokta, and he's literally a torturer. So if you tell someone outside, how can you empathize with this guy? How can you love to like him? But at the end, you grow to like him. And one of the things that is so great about Glokta, as with certain other characters, is that there is humor done in these books. There are funny moments, especially with Glokta. There are so many times where, even though you feel horrible for him, it's kind of funny to hear him complain about going up and down stairs.
Yeah. And actually, I recorded a little check-in video when I read the first quarter of the book. Talked about how I enjoyed the characters, but Glokta is just I enjoy him, but he keeps torturing everyone and keeps describing his own pain. So I'm wow, if you have sadistic tendencies, you might like Glokta, because it's all pain, pain, and pain. You mentioned that he writes morally great characters, and that he's a Lord of Grimdark. Is it possible that these things kick in more in the next books?
I think that honestly, the tone kind of stays the same. One thing is that I've said before that the Blade itself is not my favorite in his, just because it does feel like a lot of introduction, which isn't bad. But I think that you just get more involved in the world as the books go on, and just, these characters, they're not all horrible people per se. But especially with Logan, you just see sometimes where you'll be oh yeah, you're cheering for him, and then he does something that you're you're not really a good person, are you? Mm-hmm. And Glokta, he grows on you, and I feel his torturous moments aren't as severe as it goes on. There are bits and pieces there, but I feel you have the tone of it now. Okay. The only real things that I can think of, honestly, the most brutal from here on out is probably Best Served Cold. But the moments in there are, you're cheering for the main character because it's a hard revenge story.
Yeah.
So, what is your favorite part that you would say from this?
So, of course, as a Romantasy reader, I enjoyed having a little bit of kind of romantic tension between RD and Jezebel. I never know how to say his name.
Giselle Dan Luther.
Yes, that one.
One thing I will say is I do think that you will like more of the romance as it goes on. There are some moments that, it's never a romantasy, but there are good romances in it. When you finish book 3, there is one of my favorite scenes ever written is in there, and it just really makes you feel happy for a character. I'm not going to spoil it.
Okay.
But
I think you might have already told me what happens, and I might still remember it, but we'll see if that's what I think it's going to be. So one thing that I realized reading this is that I don't want to say that most romantasy books I read are written poorly, but even though I enjoy reading about the events, I don't necessarily enjoy the writing style, which I did enjoy the writing style of Joe Abercrombie. So that was nice to read something well written. Actually, planning on reading the other two books in the trilogy, and I'll end up reading the book in the next trilogy because I'm doing it as a part of another challenge we're doing. So maybe I'll end up reading the whole Joe Abercrombie series. I don't know. We'll see.
Say one thing about Joe Abercrombie. Say he's a good author.
Yeah.
That was it. We're both pretty happy with our book exchange. Both of us enjoyed the series, and we're going to continue them. And so we'll see where we end up from there.
So to sum it up, I surprisingly enjoyed reading The Blade itself. I gave it 5 out of 5 on Goodreads, and out of 10 I would give it a 9. Maybe I would take the point out for I struggle with the setup books that are setting up for a bigger action to kick in the next book, because it feels like I'm like, oh, get to the action already. But it was enjoyable.
Well, thank you all for watching, and we hope you liked this book exchange and that you do one with one of your friends, family, partner, spouse, whatever. It's really fun.
Everyone should do it. I feel like every Romantasy girl should give it a try to all these awesome books that you recommended to me, especially The Name of the Wind. I think was my favorite out of the harder fantasy books that you recommended. So I hope you enjoyed this, because we enjoyed this, and thank you for watching.